It's been 30 days since Uranus first appeared in the sky. At first, it looked like our moon had found itself a stellar partner. But then we understood something much, much bigger was headed our way. What caused Uranus to become so unstable? How could this epic collision change the ice giant? Oh, and what's this horrific stink? Ugh! This is What If, and here's what would happen if Uranus collided with Earth. Let's roll back 30 days, when things were still normal. Uranus lived a quiet life on the outskirts of our solar system, about 3 billion kilometers away from us. And then suddenly, it began to move closer. Astronomers would be the first to push the panic button. By their calculations, it would take Uranus 13 years to reach the collision point. We'd be short on time, but at least we'd have a slight chance to evacuate the Earth. But the cold blue giant had other plans in mind. This would be no standard planetary drill. Planets don't just take off from their orbits for no reason at all, but somehow Uranus did. Now it would be hurtling through the solar system, ramping up to a speed of around 1,000 kilometers per second. Because of this unexpectedly fast speed, we'd only have about 30 days left on this planet. Uranus would shine like a bright blue star in the sky, and every day it would appear bigger and brighter. Our sky would look gorgeous, not only because of the ice giant shining down on us, but also thanks to many shooting stars. Only those wouldn't be stars at all. To get to the Earth's orbit, Uranus would have to pass an asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars. This would disrupt the stable orbits of many asteroids and throw some of them our way. These asteroids can be as big as 240 kilometers in diameter. That's a few times larger than the one responsible for wiping dinosaurs off the face of the Earth about 65 million years ago. We would have nowhere to go. We'd just be left here, watching the end of times unfold in front of our eyes. Might as well enjoy the view. By the time the first asteroids appeared as shooting stars, Uranus would look about the same size as the Moon, but it would be growing rapidly as it moved ever closer. While you'd be here awaiting humanity's doom, Uranus would start shaking things up. Because Uranus is about 15 times more massive than the Earth, its gravitational pull would start massively affecting our planet. Volcanoes would begin erupting uncontrollably, and tremendous earthquakes would get in on the act, destroying the Earth from the inside. And the stink. You'd drop unconscious from even one whiff of it because, Uranus smells like farts. The ice giant's upper atmosphere is mostly composed of hydrogen sulfide. It's the same stuff that makes rotten eggs reek so bad. Imagine an entire planet of rotten eggs engulfing the Earth. Blech! The thought of it makes me nauseous. But Uranus wouldn't come alone. It would bring all of its 27 moons along for the ride. And those moons would be hitting the Earth from all sides. As a fart-filled finale, Uranus would compress what was left of our atmosphere, and the rapidly rising temperatures would ignite it. Just like that, our beautiful blue planet would fall in line and start circling the ice giant, eventually becoming one of its many moons. Uranus wouldn't get away with this assault so easily, however. Last time it collided with another planetary object twice the size of Earth, it tipped over. Yeah, Uranus is the only planet in our neighborhood that spins on its side. This impact, featuring our earthly home, could help tilt it back to how it once was. But for the Earth, we know that would be it. If by some unexplained mystery, life on Earth's stinking leftovers emerged once again, we would see the blue of Uranus on the horizon. The two biggest planets in our solar system in one telescope view. Catastrophe is imminent. If Jupiter and Saturn suddenly were on a collision course, which of the two planets would emerge victorious? How would the composition of these planets affect the outcome? And what impact would this have on the rest of our solar system? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Jupiter and Saturn collided. On December 21st, 2020, Jupiter and Saturn were closer than they've been in nearly 400 years. This legendary event has an epic name: the Great Conjunction. You could see both planets in the same telescope view. They appeared as a single star in the evening sky, but they were still pretty far from an astronomical collision. If the two gas giants came a little closer, it wouldn't be the first time Jupiter has gone head-to-head with another planet, and you can probably guess who won that battle. Both Jupiter and Saturn are almost entirely gaseous, primarily consisting of hydrogen and helium. And while they may have solid cores, there's no sharp transition between the layers. Jupiter would have some significant advantages. It's about 3 times as massive as Saturn, with almost double the volume. And it's moving faster too. Jupiter's rotation speed reaches 13 kilometers per second, while Saturn rotates at just below 10 kilometers per second. But Saturn brings a wild card to the fight. Within its 2 rings, there are at least 150 moons and moonlets. If the planets drew closer together, Jupiter's strong gravitational pull would cause these moons, moonlets, rocks, dust, and ice to accelerate toward it. Some of them would be torn apart. That's what happened when the comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 collided with Jupiter in 1994. Originally, the comet was nearly 2 kilometers wide. But by the time it crashed, Jupiter's gravity had torn it to pieces. And those fragments smashed into Jupiter with the force of 300 million atomic bombs. Yeah, and that heated Jupiter's atmospheric temperature to nearly 40,000 degrees Celsius. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, is over 2,000 times larger than that comet, so the force of it alone colliding with Jupiter would be massive. If Jupiter and Saturn collided, they would begin to merge. Their atmospheres would mix. That would raise the temperatures in the top layers of the gas giant's atmospheres. It would get so hot that Jupiter would experience a chemical reaction, gaining more iron, silicates, and even water. Eventually, Jupiter would absorb Saturn, or most of it. Scientists at Sun Yat-sen University in China modeled a scenario about what happened when a massive planetary embryo, about 10 times the size of Earth, collided with Jupiter 4.5 billion years ago. The impact was so energetic that it destroyed Jupiter's original compact core. This formed a more diluted core composed of a dense mix of liquid metallic hydrogen and helium. But if Jupiter collided with Saturn, That event would be 10 times more massive. Large amounts of material would spread out in space, and then all that material would come together into a single planetary object. We'd call it New Jupiter or Jupiternus. And maybe that new planet would cause more trouble in the solar system than you might expect. Jupiter is sometimes referred to as a failed star. That's because its size and composition are similar to a brown dwarf. But Jupiternus would be more massive and have higher internal pressure. If the temperature was high enough, this could cause nuclear fusion in its core. Yeah, Jupiternus could become a star. And the impact of having 2 stars in our planetary neighborhood would be huge. It could even mean the end of life on Earth. Now, don't worry, if these 2 planets merged, Jupiternus would have a mass 30% greater than Jupiter, but for nuclear fusion to ignite, the planet would need to reach a mass of 75 Jupiters. So, life on Earth would go on, but this would be a spectacular show with tons of gas and debris expelled. Maybe it would all be illuminated by the sun, giving us a beautiful, glittering end to Saturn as we know it. It's time for one of the biggest battles our solar system has ever seen. In this corner, a gas giant and heavyweight Jupiter. And in this corner, an infinitely small but truly terrifying black hole. What would happen to these rivals as they hurtled toward each other? Why would this event cause Earth to be bombarded by asteroids? And would it be game over for our solar system? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Jupiter collided with a black hole. Okay, before the fight, let's take a quick look at exactly what each contender is up against. Starting with our solar system's favorite. Jupiter is the 5th planet from the Sun, located about 740 million kilometers from it. This gas giant is the largest planet too. It's about 318 times more massive than Earth and twice as massive as all the other planets in our neighborhood combined. But looks can be deceiving. Compared to its opponent, the heavyweight Jupiter isn't all that heavy. Stellar black holes are a lot smaller than our gas giant, but they sure can pack a punch. The thing about black holes is that they are dense, incredibly dense. All of their matter is contained within an infinitely small point known as a singularity. And inside this tiny region, all concepts of time and space fall apart. And like any object with mass, black holes have gravity. A lot of gravity. Most black holes are remnants of massive stars. They're called stellar black holes, and they range from 3 to 10 solar masses. But because they're so dense, if a black hole with 10 times the mass of our Sun appeared in our solar system, it would only be 60 kilometers across. So, would our gas giant Jupiter stand a chance to defeat its tiny but immensely powerful contender? Or would it just be another object lost inside the black hole's point of no return? Everything in the universe is moving through space at breakneck speed, and naturally, that includes the Sun and the rest of our solar system. We're whizzing across the cosmos at about 720,000 kilometers an hour. And in this galactic dance, another star may come close enough to us to influence the outer regions of our solar system. Or worse, we might run into one of the nearly 1 billion black holes rampaging around the Milky Way galaxy. Of course, the chances of this happening are slim, The closest star in our neighborhood is over 4 light years away, and that's far. Scientists think that there's only a 1% chance that another star will ever come close enough to disrupt the edges of our solar system. The chances of a rogue star coming close enough to mess with Jupiter are even lower. But it could happen. At first, as this stealthy force of destruction swung toward us, the black hole would disrupt the Oort cloud. This area surrounds our solar system like a giant spherical shell, and it's filled with icy objects. But these mountain-sized ice cubes would be no match for a black hole. As they were pulled along for the ride with this small but massive monstrosity, this would be the first sign that an epic collision with Jupiter was unavoidable. The gravitational intruder would continue through the next region, the Kuiper Belt, and it would wreak havoc along the way. Many of the icy objects here, including the dwarf planet Pluto, would be ejected from their orbits. Things would suddenly get more serious for Earth, as many of these objects would now be on a deadly collision course with us. As it passed Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn, the black hole would tear away their gases. These gases would form an accretion disk of superheated gas and dust around the gravitational intruder. And if the black hole came too close to any of these planets, they could also be at risk of being ejected from their orbits. Then, the black hole would finally bear down on Jupiter. And right away, the gas giant would experience a similar attack on its atmosphere. The black hole would pull away hydrogen and helium gases like yarn from a yarn ball. Eventually, the entire planet would be pulled toward the black hole. It would be an unfair fight from the get-go. Jupiter wouldn't even be able to get a punch in, and if all this isn't violent enough, just wait. As this dense and hungry monster chowed down on Jupiter's abundance of gas, it would also release an explosive wave of UV and X-rays in all directions. Yeah, it would be like one big supermassive burp packed with deadly radiation. This radiation would hurtle toward us on Earth. In less than an hour, lethal amounts of radioactive material would rain down on us. But on the bright side, you'd finally be able to see the black hole up in the sky. Whatever stability we enjoy in our solar system would be gone. The black hole would be swallowing up everything in sight, including our planet. Now, if we somehow managed to be spared the full brunt of the black hole's destructive forces, well, without Jupiter, our solar system would need to find a new gravitational balance. Yeah, Jupiter had a special place in our neighborhood. Its enormous gravity kept asteroids and comets from pummeling us and other inner planets of our neighborhood. It also helped Earth maintain its nearly circular orbit around the Sun. So even if we survived all the gravitational havoc from a rogue black hole, without Jupiter, this little space rock we call home wouldn't last long. This pretzel-shaped collection of galaxies is our universe. And it's about to collide with another universe. It might be fascinating to watch, but we should probably be worried about what's going to happen when they crash. How would it change the physics of our universe? Is there any chance that we would survive? What would the collision look like from Earth? And has it ever happened before? This is What If, and here's what would happen if our universe collided with another one. The only potential evidence of a universal collision that we've ever discovered is in the form of a cold spot in our universe. In 2013, the European Space Agency's Planck satellite confirmed that this area is 1.8 billion light-years across. It's much colder than the rest of space, and it seems to be missing 10,000 galaxies. At first, scientists were baffled by its existence, but now some have theorized that this spot might be a kind of scar or bruise left from colliding with another universe. But how can we know for sure? And if this is the case, how long before it happens again? Before we go any further, let me take a second to address something that might have some of you scratching your heads. Usually, when we refer to the universe, we're talking about all space and time, including planets, stars, galaxies, and all other forms of matter and energy. So, if the universe basically means everything in existence, then logically there can only be one of them, right? Not necessarily. Some scientists believe in the concept of the multiverse. This theory states that our universe wasn't the only one that popped into existence during the Big Bang, that there's an infinite number of other universes out there too, and we just haven't found a way to see or measure them yet. If this theory is right, then it's possible that all these other universes could have grown at the same rate, at the same time, after the Big Bang. If that's the case, then they might have banged into each other as they expanded. And that brings us back to the cold spot. The cold spot is a region of our universe that's 0.00015 degrees colder than everywhere else. That might not seem like a big deal, but when the rest of the universe's temperature is so consistent, scientists have started to think it's something more than an anomaly. They think that the cold spot might be a scar left over from a collision between universes. And the crash might have moved a bit of energy out of that spot in our universe, causing the colder temperature. But what would a collision of that magnitude look like? Well, we can't say for sure, but there are some pretty cool ideas out there. According to one physicist at the University of California, if another universe came crashing into ours, it would look like a giant mirror in the sky rushing towards us, because its wall would reflect light. If this other universe collided with our own, we could inherit a whole new set of governing laws of physics. Gravity could weaken or disappear, resulting in a slew of planets escaping the gravity of their stars, sending them flying off into space at ridiculous speeds. Without gravity, stars would cease to exist, and we'd be left in perpetual darkness. This would make life on Earth, and throughout most of the universe, nearly impossible. With no shining stars, we'd lose any means of nourishment or breathable air, as plants would no longer be capable of transforming starlight into energy through photosynthesis. But as bad as that all sounds, it's not something we really have to worry about, since the chances of our universe colliding with another one are slim to none. For one thing, we're not even sure that there are other universes out there to collide with. And even if there are, any collisions would have happened at that point when they were expanding, 380,000 years after the Big Bang, which would mean there's little to no chance of it happening again.
It's all over for Uranus. The ice giant is locked into a collision course with the king of all planets in our solar system, Jupiter. What would happen as the two planets made their epic approach? Would Uranus get pulled apart into bits and pieces? Or could this ice giant somehow deal a mortal blow to its gigantic opponent? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Jupiter and Uranus collided. Okay, let's get to know our two planetary prize fighters a little better. You know, before they both potentially get blown into oblivion. First, Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system. Put all the other planets together and it's still twice as massive, but This monstrosity has no solid surface. It's nearly all gas, mostly made out of hydrogen and helium. In the other corner of the ring is Uranus. Even though it's 3 times smaller and 20 times less massive than Jupiter, it's the 3rd largest planet in the solar system, so don't let the size difference fool you. Underneath Uranus's hydrogen and helium atmosphere, there's an abundance of water ice. That's why Uranus isn't a gas giant like Jupiter. It's an ice giant, like its neighbor, Neptune. Of all the planets in the solar system, Uranus is unique. It rotates on its side, all thanks to an Earth-size object that slammed into it billions of years ago. So, could the most epic collision in the history of collisions end with Uranus getting knocked right side up? You likely don't track Uranus's whereabouts in the night sky, but if you did, you'd be in for the realization that the icy planet has somehow slipped out of its usual orbit, commencing countdown to collision. On its way toward Jupiter, Uranus would first need to survive a close encounter with the gas giant next door, Saturn. With all its colorful rings and many moons, Saturn is twice as large as the stinky blue planet. But the two planets have very similar gravitational pulls, so as they just barely brush past one another, well, Uranus could end up sweeping up a moon or two to add to its current collection of 27. Uranus would now be barreling down onto its opponent. The closer it gets, the clearer the picture would become of just how incredibly enormous that opponent is. Jupiter is over 20 times as massive as Uranus, and even though it doesn't technically have a surface, its surface gravity is more than twice as strong. Maybe Uranus was barking up the wrong planetary tree. Except it's too late to turn back now. Besides, you've got front row seats to this epic fight. It wouldn't be smooth sailing right up into Jupiter's atmosphere. First, Uranus would have to elbow its way through some of Jupiter's 80 moons. The first of these would be Pasiphae. There wouldn't be too much to worry about here. Pasiphae is very small. It's more than 60 times smaller than our moon. Uranus would pass right by it and the remaining minefield of Jupiter's moons completely unscathed. Okay, now the planetary heavyweights would be getting close. But how this collision would unfold would all depend on Uranus's angle of impact. If it somehow managed to slip into Jupiter's orbit, then the two would be on course for a head-on collision. In this event, the atmospheres of both planets would compress as they came into contact. This would result in both of their temperatures rapidly increasing. And then, boom! No, I'm just kidding. With no oxygen on either planet, they wouldn't ignite in fiery explosions. But if you're only in it for the spectacle, well, don't worry. The collision would still be very violent. The two planets would make full-body contact, combining their mass along the way, like a Uranus or maybe a Jupiter. One thing that wouldn't happen, though, is Jupiter turning into a star. In order to become a brown dwarf, it would need to weigh 13 times more than it does now, or 85 times more if it wanted to become a low-mass star. Sadly, adding Uranus under its belt would only increase Jupiter's mass by a fraction. Now, more realistically, Uranus would hit Jupiter from the side. This collision would also begin with the two atmospheres compressing, except instead of merging into one, they'd both remain somewhat intact but have a lot of their gases thrown off into space. So, after this epic encounter, we'd still be left with 8 planets in the solar system. Though these two would certainly look a little different. Jupiter would look like a thinner version of its formerly huge, gassy self. And Uranus could end up being not much more than a solid rocky core covered in water and ammonia. If things unfolded like this, then that could leave Saturn to take over the throne of largest planet in the solar system.
In the center of our galaxy, the Milky Way, there's a supermassive black hole feeding on nearby stars. It's called Sagittarius A star. And if a giant gravitational monster slowly eating the galaxy isn't terrifying enough, there's another cosmic monstrosity lurking around it. Is it possible that one day they would get a little too close and collapse on each other? What would be left of the Milky Way if they did? Would there be even a slight chance that the Earth could get out of that safely? This is What If. And here's what would happen if a magnetar collided with a black hole. This monstrosity creeping through the Milky Way is a remnant of a giant exploded star. But it's not just any remnant. It's an extremely dense and very magnetic collapsed stellar core, a magnetar. Let me refresh your knowledge of magnetars. They're born when a star, at least 8 times more massive than our Sun, reaches its expiration date and explodes in a beautiful supernova. Much of that star is gone, but the dense core of it remains. Most of these remnants become neutron stars. They spin very fast, usually a few times per second, and they're composed of neutrons. Some neutron stars have such strong magnetic fields that they emit electromagnetic radiation from their poles. That makes them pulsars, and you can observe them with a telescope when their poles face the Earth. Only a few pulsars develop such an extremely powerful magnetic field. They become the strongest magnets in the universe, the magnetars. They spin once every 10 seconds, but their magnetic field is 100 times stronger than that of a neutron star. If one of those magnets came halfway between the Moon and the Earth, well, it wouldn't be pretty. But would it be as bad from a distance of 26 light years away? Well, what I'd like to know is, would a magnetar swallow a black hole, or would a black hole gobble up a magnetar? The collision of these two giants wouldn't end up in an explosion, but in a quiet cosmic merger, stretched over billions of years. Although magnetars are incredibly powerful, they would lose the battle with a black hole. Depending on the trajectory of the magnetar, as well as the size and mass of both the magnetar and the black hole, the magnetic monster would be eaten up either whole or slowly, piece by piece. As the magnetar was being torn apart by the black hole, it would be sending gravitational waves throughout the universe, disturbing the curvature of space-time. Once the black hole consumed the magnetar, its mass would increase and expand its event horizon. And thanks to this expansion, more and more stars would be flung into its dark density. The black hole would be slowly eating our galaxy, star by star. Eventually, after quadrillions of years of star consumption, the black hole could gobble up the Milky Way, all of it. By that time, humanity would most likely be long gone anyway.
The biggest planet in the solar system has gone rogue, and now it's heading straight toward Earth. You have 30 days till this gas giant wipes us all out. What speeds would Jupiter be traveling at? What kind of havoc would it wreak along the way? And Is there any way we could survive getting eaten by a planetary Pac-Man? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Jupiter collided with Earth. In our night sky, Jupiter appears a lot like a bright star. From our earthly point of view, only Venus and the Moon are brighter. But something strange is going on 588 million kilometers away. Jupiter has ramped up its speed to 225 kilometers per second. That's 15 times faster than its usual orbital velocity. So now, this gas giant, 11 times larger and 317 times heavier than Earth, is on the loose. And it's going to speed right at us until it's filled up the entire night sky. But don't worry, you could already be dead long before those 30 days are up. As it moved toward Earth, Jupiter would first pass through the asteroid belt. This region between Jupiter and Mars consists of hundreds of thousands of rocky bodies, ranging from tiny dust particles to asteroids almost 1,000 kilometers in width. But none of these would do anything to slow down the gas giant. The average distance between these asteroids is about equal to 7 Jupiters in a row, so there's a chance the planet could pass through completely unscathed. And in our night sky, Jupiter would now look double its usual size. Which doesn't seem like a whole lot to make everyone panic, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't cause a little bit of chaos on its trip. You see, Jupiter is vital to our solar system and to life on Earth. It acts as a gatekeeper to our cozy planetary neighborhood, protecting us from being bombarded with giant, life-ending asteroids all the time. Why? Well, because Jupiter's gravitational pull is massive, about 4 times stronger than Earth's. This strong pull redirects asteroids that could be on a collision course with us. And this is good news for you because even one asteroid as small as 5 kilometers across could end life on Earth as you know it. Just like what happened to the dinosaurs around 66 million years ago. But if Jupiter suddenly started heading toward the center of the solar system, it could send many dangerous space rocks our way. If one of them smashed into Earth, you might not live long enough to see Jupiter swallow Earth. But for the sake of our hypothetical scenario, let's keep you alive. For now. While sending asteroids on a collision course with Earth, Jupiter could also pick up a new moon or two. The asteroid belt is home to the only dwarf planet in the inner solar system, Ceres. It has about 25% of the total mass of the entire belt. Maybe this dwarf planet would join the 79 other moons that make up Jupiter's very faint ring system. Next stop would be Mars, and now Jupiter would appear almost 4 times larger than usual from Earth. Now, while the red planet could be lucky enough to avoid being obliterated by a head-on impact with Jupiter, it might not make it out untouched. Maybe the newly added moon, Ceres, would slam into it. And this wouldn't be Mars's first rodeo either. About 700 million years after the formation of our solar system, a huge asteroid even larger than Ceres collided with Mars. That collision tore away part of the Martian hemisphere, and the debris from that asteroid started orbiting the red planet, eventually forming its 2 moons, Phobos and Deimos. These moons still orbit Mars today. Now, at 16 million kilometers away, Jupiter would be closing in on the home stretch. From Earth, you'd see it bright and clear, as large as the moon. And from this point on, you'd start to feel some of the effects of Jupiter's powerful magnetic field. This field is the largest object in the solar system, and it's 18,000 times more powerful than Earth's. It would be so strong that it could trap charged particles and accelerate them. These particles would damage electronics in our passing spacecraft, and they could potentially penetrate Earth's atmosphere and magnetic field. And that would be really bad news. Now, you were lucky to avoid one of these planet-killing asteroid collisions, but now you and everyone else on planet Earth would start to suffer from severe radiation sickness. First, you'd be incapacitated by nausea, diarrhea, and vomiting. You'd also feel anxiety, confusion, and could lose consciousness. After a few torturous hours, you'd start to feel okay. But then, the final stage would kick in. You'd experience tremors and convulsions before ending up in a coma, or worse. If somehow you survived this, the ultimate end would draw nearer and nearer. Now, only 2 million kilometers away, the Great Red Spot would be the same size as the Moon, and the planet itself would appear 8 times larger than that rock above us. Earth would now be caught in a violent game of tug-of-war between Jupiter and the Sun. This could cause tidal heating all around our planet. Earth could become a hellhole, riddled with earthquakes and volcanic eruptions that would spew sulfur dioxide gases into space. All the while, Jupiter would be making its final approach. Now, as close as the Moon, it would occupy 40 times more space in our night sky. And as it crashes into Earth, the atmospheres of both planets would compress. This would rapidly increase the temperature, causing everything on Earth, including the air itself, to burst into flames. And in this colossal inferno, Earth would burn up in Jupiter's atmosphere until we fuse with the gas giant forever.
A rogue star is headed straight for our sun. If these two stars slam into each other, it could spell the end of all life on our planet. How could a rogue star end up in our solar system? What would this epic collision look like? And how much time do you have to live? This is What If, and here's what would happen if a rogue star collided with the sun. As the name would suggest, rogue stars drift through space. They don't belong to any particular galaxy, or if they once did, they've been ejected from their homes at some point by supernovas or two galaxies ramming into each other. Whatever it is that sends these stars hurtling away from the gravitational pull of their original galaxies, it fires them off at very high speeds. In order to break free of our own Milky Way galaxy, a star would need to move as fast as 550 kilometers per second. Luckily, our sun is only moving at a mere 200 kilometers per second, not nearly fast enough to become rogue. But these wandering stars aren't all that uncommon. They may even account for as many as half of the 200 billion trillion stars in the universe. And one of them could be headed toward our sun right now. Meet Gliese 710. This rogue dwarf star is on a trajectory that would bring it close to our solar system in around 1.3 million years. When Gliese 710 eventually reaches us, it would enter the outermost section of our solar system, the Oort cloud, at a speed of about 51,500 kilometers per hour. It could send the icy bodies out there flying in different directions, maybe even right toward Earth. Once it has reached Neptune, the countdown to the epic collision would begin. T-minus 10 years till the impact with the Sun. At this point, you'd better just plan to live your best life while preparing for the upcoming apocalypse. The gravitational pull of Gliese 710 would destabilize the orbits of our planetary neighbors, nudging them left and right. This could go as far as pushing Earth out of the habitable zone. Or it could turn us into a rogue planet after unceremoniously being catapulted out of the solar system. After 10 years, it would finally be getting close to collision time. As each day passes, things are only going to get worse. One possibility is that the Sun and Gliese 710 would merge into a red nova. This would result in a violent explosion that would unleash nearly 500,000 times more light than what the Sun does right now. Given the amount of time light takes to travel from the Sun to the Earth, you would be blissfully unaware of this destructive explosion for 8 minutes. But the moment you do find out, all that light would likely blind you in a millisecond and then immediately fry you on the spot. That's because directly behind this blinding light would be super hot gas. This wave of heat could be powerful enough to wipe out nearly everything in its path. Bye-bye Mercury, Venus, and yeah, Earth too. Our atmosphere and oceans would be completely blasted away. This would leave our planet as nothing more than a barren rock. The explosion would also have created massive amounts of high-energetic neutrinos. These would be able to boil you from the inside out. Earth would also be shrouded in lethal levels of UV and gamma radiation. Even if you somehow managed to survive the explosion, you wouldn't last long from the harmful effects of all this radiation. You'd have damage to your eyes, skin, and even DNA. Now, if an alien species was watching this all unfold from a distant galaxy with an incredibly powerful telescope, they'd see a single bright star surrounded by an excess of reddish-colored gas. And the infrared light left behind from the explosion would be visible for a long time after. But that wouldn't be the only way all this could possibly go down. There is a possibility there could be a more peaceful alternative. Yeah, if the two stars are moving a bit slower relative to each other, they could end up merging into one massive new star as they orbit each other. Our Sun would strip mass from its smaller companion, Gliese 710, and swallow it in a process known as stellar cannibalism. Then, this extremely hot and bright star would be called a blue straggler. Though it may sound many times more peaceful, this option would still likely spell out the end of life on Earth. With our Sun now a massive blue star, the habitable zone of our solar system would be pushed further away. The biggest planet in the solar system, and the smallest star in the known universe. Today, they're on a collision course, and Earth might not survive this. Meet the star with a catchy name, EBLM J0555-57AB. Its gravity is 300 times that of Earth's, and it's about the size of our Saturn. EBLM J0555-57AB is a red dwarf and the smallest star we've ever discovered. Usually, it resides 600 light years away from us in its own double star system. But not today. Today, it broke the cosmic speed limit and rushed toward our solar system to meet with the biggest gas giant in it, Jupiter. Let me just tell you, Jupiter is huge. It's about 11 times larger than Earth. It's even bigger than the red dwarf star coming its way, but because it's mostly made of hydrogen, it's not massive enough to be a star. To start converting all its hydrogen into helium and turn into a red dwarf, Jupiter would need to be at least 80 times more massive than it is today. So, what would happen if these two gas giants collided? Well, before the interstellar red dwarf could even make it to Jupiter, it would have to pass through the Oort cloud. The Oort cloud is a collection of icy comets and other bodies on the edge of our solar system. As the smallest star in the known universe was passing through this icy debris, it would wreak big havoc in our planetary neighborhood. Yeah, it would send icy comets our way, and some of them would start hitting Earth. We'd have to think of a way to protect our planet from this comet shower. But time would not be on our side, because the smallest star in the universe would keep moving toward Jupiter. Our stellar guest might be smaller in size than Jupiter, but it sure would be more massive. EBLM J0555-57AB's gravitational pull would start to tug on the planet. And don't forget that we'd now have a second star in our solar system. Things would start getting hot. All the heat from the red dwarf plus its strong gravity would make Jupiter grow in size. The gas giant's atmosphere would puff up as all the gases were heating up and expanding. Some of Jupiter's atmosphere would start to escape into space and toward the stellar intruder. Eventually, all the runaway Jupiter gases would form a hot ring around EBLM J0555-57AB. It would look as if we had a black hole in the solar system, only it would be really bright. The red dwarf star would keep slowly ripping Jupiter apart. Now it would be eating whole chunks of our gas giant. For a moment, Jupiter would take the shape of an American football, but soon enough, the star would engulf it entirely. Sorry, Jupiter, you didn't stand a chance. But now we'd be in a real pickle. Jupiter would no longer exist in the solar system, and now we'd have an alien red dwarf star surrounded by a ring of hot gases. Our solar system wouldn't be the same without Jupiter. This gas giant wasn't here for a cool view. Jupiter's gravity usually attracts asteroids and comets that make it into our planetary neighborhood. It gobbles them up before they make it further into the solar system. With no Jupiter to protect us from all the space rocks, Earth would be getting bombarded by all kinds of debris. Icy comets, asteroids, you name it. Every day we'd be hit by about 170 meteors, comets, and asteroids. That's 10 times more than what's making it to our planet right now. Life here would sure get more dangerous. Who knows how long before one really big asteroid would come and destroy all life on our planet. But things would get even worse. Having another star in our solar system would disrupt the orbits of all the planets it passed, including Earth's. Of course, it would take EBLM J0555-57AB millions of years to rampage all the way to our sun, so you might stay alive long enough to witness the epic slow-motion chaos. Unless the red dwarf sent another planet on a collision course with us. Yeah, that would end things much, much quicker.
All the planetary collisions in the solar system would create a rippling effect. The planetary orbits would get disrupted even more as time passed. Earth could even get knocked out of its orbit entirely. This would send you and everything else on the planet on a rogue trip across the universe. And without the sun to give us warmth, the Earth would turn into a frigid, lifeless rock very soon. If you somehow survived up to this point, you wouldn't have very long now.
Black holes are the gravitational monsters of the universe. They are so powerful that nothing, not even light, can escape their grasp. One black hole is bad enough, but if you took two black holes and smashed them into each other, they'd be capable of changing the shape of space itself. How epic would that explosion be? And could it somehow reach Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if two black holes collided. Of course, we have no means to capture or control black holes yet. So imagine you're observing one from a giant telescope here on Earth, and suddenly you notice something strange. Is that another black hole? It sure looks like it. And it also looks like these two are about to collide. It turns out that even gravitational giants like black holes occasionally run into each other in the seemingly vast universe. Are you about to see a nuclear bomb-like explosion of supersized proportions? The reality might be a little disappointing, but you still wouldn't want that galactic bomb to detonate anywhere near your planet. Bear with me here, because to understand how black holes collide, you need to arm yourself with a bit of theory. Black holes come in all shapes and sizes, and of course, the magnitude of the collision would depend on which black holes are slammed together. Stellar mass black holes are the most common type. They can have up to 20 solar masses, but could fit in a ball much smaller in diameter than our sun. Okay, now let's go back to you observing this gravitational show firsthand. First, you'd see the two black holes getting a little closer until they started to orbit each other. They would begin pulling matter and gas into a vortex between them. Get comfortable, because it could take billions of years for their centers to merge. But as the two black holes merged into one, they'd wobble a little and then settle down into a new, bigger black hole. Now, I hope you're not disappointed with such an explosion-free outcome, but wait, there's something I haven't mentioned yet. The excess energy from the collision would be expelled back into the universe as gravitational waves. As I mentioned before, colliding black holes can change the shape of the space around them. They do it by rippling this space with gravitational waves. Albert Einstein predicted gravitational waves over 100 years ago, but scientists didn't observe them until 2015, when the advanced LIGO Gravitational Wave Observatory finally detected gravitational waves after 8 years of operation. The cool thing about these waves is that they affect the distance between the Sun and the Earth. They only change it by the diameter of a hydrogen atom. You'd need a whole lot of colliding black holes to really see a difference. But what about supermassive black holes? Would their collision be more explosive? These black holes have a mass of at least hundreds of thousands of times the mass of our Sun. But the thing is, they might never even collide at all. Two supermassive giants would get close to each other until they reached a gravitational balance and froze in their respective orbits. But add another supermassive black hole to the equation, and the three of them could tip over the gravitational scale and finally collide. Not in a massive cosmic explosion, but a silent merger, sending powerful gravitational waves throughout the universe. You know, despite the fact that black holes are an unstoppable, insatiable force from which nothing can escape, we have nothing to fear from their collision. Ah, what a view. The air over here is especially... Wait, what is this doing here? This is What If, and here's what would happen if another planet smashed into Earth. About 50 billion rogue planets are roaming the Milky Way with no host star to hold onto. They don't give off any light of their own, and that makes them difficult to spot. Last time a stray planetoid the size of Mars smashed into Earth, it scattered our planet's young crust into space, where gravity glued those particles into what we now call the Moon. This time, it would be all hellfire and brimstone with no survivors left. And here's a timeline of how things break down. A few weeks before the collision, an unknown object would appear in the sky. It wouldn't happen overnight, no. We'd know something was coming. We'd see the planet slowly growing bigger, until one day it was as big as the Moon. It would seem as if everything was unfolding at a relatively slow pace, but that's only because of the huge distances involved. Out there in space, the rogue planet would rush towards us at a speed of 11 kilometers a second. When the uninvited space intruder came into the Moon's orbit, bad things would start to happen. The gravitational pull of the alien planet would make the tides on Earth 8 times larger than they are now. Floods would begin to rampage through the coastline cities. And still, the mega tsunamis are yet to come. 28 hours before the collision, the gravity of both planets pulling themselves towards each other would speed up the process. The incoming planet would hit a speed of 60 kilometers a second. Mega tsunamis would plot their way across the oceans. With this would come lightning storms, plus hurricanes and tornadoes so large they wouldn't have a number on the category scale. If you didn't book yourself a vacation aboard a spaceship that would take you to outer space, your time on this planet would be running out. 3 minutes before the collision, the rogue planet enters the Earth's atmosphere. Provided you hadn't already been killed by the lightning, hurricanes, flooding, earthquakes, or volcanoes, you'd see the rocky invader completely filling the sky above you. Nanoseconds before the collision, the atmospheres of both planets would be compressed together and glow brightly. It would get so hot that everything on the side of the Earth about to get hit would instantly vaporize. For the rest of the Earth, the ground would become scorching magma. Upon impact, the collision would cause friction between the two planets. While the hellfire would rush across Earth's surface, the planet's inner core would be melting it from the inside out. This would have one big outcome. The Earth would collapse in on itself. The end of the era. If you did manage to get away in a spaceship, you'd see the massive remnants of both planets catapulted into different orbits. Some of them would hit other planets. Others would be fired out of the solar system entirely. Whatever was left would form a new asteroid belt encircling the Sun. None of this would give any hint that there was once intelligent life on planet Earth. But hey, you can sleep well knowing that this won't ever happen. Well, most likely not.
See that bright object in the sky? That's Andromeda, the closest major galaxy to our Milky Way and the most distant thing you can see with the naked eye. And it's racing towards us at the rate of 110 kilometers per second. Eventually, 4 billion years from now, Andromeda will merge with our Milky Way in a huge galactic collision. But what if these galaxies were to collide tomorrow? Would all the stars and planets suddenly plow into each other? Could our solar system survive this massive crash? And what would this galactic light show look like from Earth? This is What If, and here's what would happen if the Milky Way and the Andromeda galaxy collided. There are at least 100 billion galaxies in the observable universe, all colliding with each other. Larger galaxies merge about every 9 billion years, while smaller ones slam into each other even more often. Wait, what about dark energy? Isn't this hypothesized force pulling the universe and everything in it apart?
It sure is. For nearby galaxies, though, gravity takes over. Andromeda and the Milky Way are no exception. They both contain central supermassive black holes that will eventually mesh the two star systems together. Imagine if that gigantic collision were to happen tomorrow. What would that look like? Andromeda's pretty far away. It couldn't just overcome a distance of 2.5 million light-years in a single day. Let's assume that somehow the supermassive black hole in the center of the Milky Way increased its gravitational pull on Andromeda's black hole, and the big crunch happened 4 billion years earlier than expected. What's next? First, there would be no Milky Way and no Andromeda. The two spiral galaxies would become a totally different type of galaxy, an elliptical one. You can call the new galaxy Milkomeda or Milkdromeda, whichever one you prefer. Once Andromeda invaded Milky Way's personal space, the Sun and our entire solar system would be forced to the outskirts of the newly formed galaxy, 26,000 light-years further away. And that's the best case scenario. In the worst case one, we might end up in a galactic Siberia, 160,000 light-years away from Milkomeda's center. What about all the stars in both galaxies? Would they collide with each other? Some of them would. But even though Milky Way counts around 250 billion stars, and Andromeda has over 1 trillion of them, all these stars are separated by light-years of empty space. It's unlikely that many of them would merge. Instead, they'd just get scattered into different orbits. Ooh, I forgot to mention, we invited a third galaxy to this party, the Triangulum Galaxy, or M33, a smaller satellite galaxy of Andromeda. This is shaping up to be a massive galactic mashup. For us Earthlings, this would look just incredible. The bright core of the new supergalaxy would set the night sky ablaze. Eventually, the two supermassive black holes at the center of these galaxies would come so close to each other that they themselves would merge. All the gas taken up by this monstrous black hole would form a bright quasar at the center of the galaxy. Another spectacular show for us here on Earth. Too bad in reality our planet won't live long enough to see any of it. By the time Andromeda slams into the Milky Way, the Sun would have already turned into a red giant and swallowed up the entire Earth. But that's a story for another What If.
It's been 30 days since Uranus first appeared in the sky. At first, it looked like our moon had found itself a stellar partner. But then we understood something much, much bigger was headed our way. What caused Uranus to become so unstable?